Guidelines on compensation, which left wrongly convicted people being charged living costs for the time they'd spent in jail, are to be scrapped with immediate effect. Ukraine's president has said a Russian bomb has hit a blood transfusion centre, causing deaths and injuries. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has called for peaceful protests after he was handed a 3-year jail sentence for alleged corruption. The government has scrapped a rule that meant prisoners who'd been wrongly convicted, then later cleared of a crime, could still be charged living costs for their time in jail. The guidance was introduced in 2006, but the Ministry of Justice said it had not been used for a decade. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Daniel Sandford.
When Andy Malkinson was cleared of rape last month, having wrongly spent 17 years in prison, he pointed out that when he eventually receives his compensation, he might have living costs deducted from it. It was a reminder of a controversial section of the guidance on compensation for miscarriages of justice that was introduced 16 years ago. It allowed the independent compensation assessor to deduct money from the overall total to take into account the fact that the wrongly convicted prisoner had not had to pay rent or a mortgage while they were behind bars. The Justice Secretary Alex Chalk has now decided to scrap that part of the guidance with immediate effect. He said the change would ensure that victims do not pay twice for crimes they didn't commit. The Ministry of Justice said that the independent assessor had not in fact made any deductions for living costs for 10 years.
Andy Malkinson told the BBC the scrapping of the guidance was a welcome change.
The guilty don't pay. Why should the innocent? It's a step in the right direction. There's much more that needs changing too. You don't want to put just a stick-in plaster on something that's mortally wounded. It needs much more.
President Zelensky of Ukraine has said a Russian-guided aerial bomb has hit a blood transfusion centre in Kupiansk in the northeast of the country. He said deaths and injuries had been reported, but gave no further details, adding that emergency workers were tackling a fire at the scene. Mr. Zelensky's social media post described the attack as a war crime. Moscow has repeatedly denied targeting civilians during its invasion of Ukraine. The claims about this latest attack can't be independently verified. Our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse is monitoring events from Kiev.
If there is accuracy to President Zelensky's claim, it appears once again a medical building has come in harm's way. We've seen it before with a maternity hospital in the besieged city of Mariupol last year. We've seen it in a mental health hospital in Dnipro just a few months ago. This is a war that is synonymous with civilian areas, with cities being directly targeted.
The former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has been arrested after a court sentenced him to 3 years in prison on corruption charges. He denies wrongdoing, and his lawyers say they intend to challenge the decision. In a statement, Mr. Khan urged his supporters not to sit silently at home and to protest peacefully against his detention. The UK Foreign Office said it was monitoring the situation closely. Our Pakistan correspondent Caroline Davis reports.
The sound of sirens blaring as police cars whisked Imran Khan away from his home in Lahore. For the second time this year, he's been arrested. Earlier today, a judge in Islamabad found him guilty of not declaring money gained when he sold state gifts. Calling him dishonest, he sentenced Imran Khan to 3 years in prison. Last time Mr. Khan was arrested in May, there were protests, some of which turned violent. He was released, but his PTI party has faced a dramatic crackdown. Many of his senior party leadership were arrested, then announced that they had left the party. Police picked up thousands of his supporters. In a pre-recorded video released after his arrest today, Mr. Khan said his supporters should not sit quietly at home.
Peaceful protests should continue until you get your right. This is your fundamental right to choose your government through voting. Now we are in a situation where a puppet government has been imposed on the people.
A small number of his supporters gathered outside Mr. Khan's home in Lahore, but were quickly moved on by police. Several hours on since the arrest, and there have not been reports of mass protest. Today's decision will lead to Imran Khan's disqualification from the upcoming election. I spoke to Mariam Aurangzeb, the Minister for Information and Broadcasting. Pretty useful for your party, though, that your main political opponent has just been disqualified in the run-up for a general election.
Oh, you have to be accountable for your deeds and law. This has nothing to do with politics. A person who's been proven guilty by the court has to be arrested.
Mr. Khan's lawyers intend to appeal against the decision, but for now he's being held by police. His political future deeply uncertain.
An Israeli security guard is reported to have been shot dead by a Palestinian attacker in a busy area of Tel Aviv. The gunman was also killed. The shooting comes a day after a young Palestinian man was killed in an attack by armed Israeli settlers in a village to the east of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. From Tel Aviv, here's our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell.
2 guards working for Tel Aviv municipality were out on patrol when they noticed a man who looked suspicious, but he didn't respond to their calls to stop, according to Israeli police. As the pair got off their motorcycles, the man is said to have pulled out a pistol and fatally shot one of the guards. His partner then shot the Palestinian gunman. Israeli security forces say that the attacker was from near Jenin in the northern West Bank and that he'd been wanted for the past 6 months. The Tel Aviv shooting follows an attack by Jewish settlers in the village of Berka on Friday night, which has further raised tensions in the West Bank. Israeli police say they've arrested 2 settlers on suspicion of involvement in the killing of a 19-year-old Palestinian man.
Prosecutors in the United States have asked a judge to limit information which Donald Trump can publicly discuss about his election fraud case. The lead prosecutor has filed papers expressing concern about one of the former president's social media posts. Mr. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 4 conspiracy and obstruction charges. The judge has given his legal team until Monday evening to respond. More details from our North America correspondent, Sean Dilley.
The prosecution said they were ready to release a substantial amount of material to the defence in Donald Trump's federal election interference case. But in their court filing, the special prosecutor Jack Smith argued that a protective order was particularly important in this case because the former president has previously issued public statements on social media about witnesses, judges and attorneys. Mr. Smith highlighted one of Mr. Trump's social media posts from Friday, which said, "If you go after me, I'm coming for you." The prosecution argued that publicly releasing some information could have a harmful chilling effect on witnesses or adversely affect the fair administration of justice.
The organisers of the World Scout Jamboree in South Korea say they'll press ahead with the event despite thousands of children being moved out of its campsite. The UK, the US and Singapore have all withdrawn, blaming high temperatures at the site near the town of Busan. South Korea's Prime Minister says he will do all he can to ensure the safe running of the gathering. Our correspondent Jean Mackenzie reports from the camp.
All day here, the fierce sun has pounded the tents as the British teenagers packed their bags and boarded buses bound for more comfortable hotel rooms. One of the UK team members told me their decision to pull out wasn't based just on the extreme heat. That they could have withstood, but it was down to the facilities and the food. The toilets had become a health risk, and some children's dietary needs were not being met. They'd lost confidence they could keep everyone safe. But at the site, the remaining scouts told us they were happy to still be here. 16-year-old Blanca's sister was taken to hospital on the first day, but she's recovering, and so are the conditions, Blanca says.
Now situations are better. They give us cold water. They let us stay inside places.
The British Scouts have all been pulled out. How do you feel about that?
I'm sad that they didn't stay. And they're really cool people, and I'm sad for them that they got to leave because I really enjoy spending time with them.
The South Korean organisers are desperately trying to stop other countries from leaving. At a news conference earlier, the Prime Minister announced he was sending more medical staff, along with an army of 700 people to maintain the toilets. But it might be the forecast rain that breaks this heatwave and saves the day.
A number of people have had to leave their homes in North Yorkshire because of flooding after Storm Anthony brought winds of up to 78 miles per hour and heavy rain to parts of England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Cleveland police said residents in Loftus and Carlin Howe were being supported by the local authority. Great Western Railways has warned of widespread disruption to services between Exeter and Penzance due to a number of fallen trees. In sport, England will play Australia in the final of the Netball World Cup. And there have been wins for Scotland and England in warm-up matches for the Rugby World Cup. With the details and the rest of the day's action, here's John Wilkinson.
England's 46-40 win over New Zealand means they'll face the 11-time winners Australia in the Netball World Cup final in Cape Town later. They've had 3 straight third-place finishes at the tournament, but goalkeeper Jiva Mentor says they've already proved that they deserve to be seen as one of the world's best sides.
It's just so great to have that support, and hopefully we're able to bring back a good medal for our home nation, and that's what we did in 2018, and it really changed netball, and we're on that directory, and we just want to keep doing that, and to have a World Cup for the first time in African soil and to be able to come home and go better than No Roses team has gone before is just brilliant to be part of.
The England rugby head coach Steve Borthwick says he'll reflect on their performance in a 20-9 defeat to Wales in Cardiff. Borthwick names his World Cup squad on Monday and says his team certainly have elements of the game to work on.
Before the game, we wanted to see the foundations of our game, see the progress. One of the key areas I talked about was the attack, and I think in that first half we created a load of opportunities in the opposition 22. In Test rugby, you've got to score when you're there.
Scotland were 25-21 winners over France, coming from 18 points down and having Xander Fagerson sent off after 54 minutes. Ireland were 33-17 winners over Italy. Britain's women have taken gold in the team pursuit at the World Cycling Championships. Katie Archibald, Eleanor Barker, Josie Knight and Anna Morris beat the New Zealand team for their first success in the event since 2014. Charlie Hatton won the mountain bike downhill final. There were 3 other golds for Britain in paracycling, including Sam Ruddock and Blaine Hunt defending their men's C1 and C5 1-kilometre time trial titles. And Britain have also won 2 gold medals and a silver on day 6 of the Paraswimming World Championships.
A surprise participant at an indoor cycling class in California has raised eyebrows, even among the star-studded residents of Santa Monica. James Llewellyn takes up the story.
A dark room, pounding music and sweaty bodies. No, it's not a nightclub, it's an indoor cycling session. They've become some of the most popular fitness classes around the world, espoused even by world leaders and celebrities. So, when the TikTok influencer Hannah Harmelin arrived at her Taylor Swift-themed session in Santa Monica and spotted security guards outside, she thought her wildest dreams had come true.
I'm like, what is going on? My mind immediately goes like, holy Taylor Swift is about to be riding in my 7 a.m. SoulCycle class. Like, she's performing in LA. Like, celebrities do this all the time.
The mystery deepened during the class. 3 security guards stood in the corner throughout, and the instructor kept the lights down low, raising hopes among the cyclists that they had a pop legend in their midst.
And of course you've heard of like Justin Bieber coming in and singing a song, and like Beyonce and Jay-Z like riding class. So I'm freaking out the whole time. So the class ends and I'm looking around trying to see where she is. It turns out it was the Prime Minister of the UK. Apparently he's a Swiftie.
Rishi Sunak is in California for a family holiday and has previously confessed his liking for Taylor Swift. His wife is also a fan of indoor cycling classes. She's rumoured to have joined Jill Biden for a session the day after the King's coronation. But Downing Street wouldn't be drawn on the Prime Minister's latest foray into the world of high-tech exercise, saying it wouldn't provide a running commentary on his very Californian holiday.
An Indian spacecraft has entered the moon's orbit as the country makes its second attempt at a landing. If Chandrayaan-3 does manage to touch down successfully later this month, India will become only the 4th country to land on the moon. Now for our first look at the Sunday papers, and the Sunday Times reports that the Home Secretary Suella Braverman believes the Iranian state is now the biggest threat to Britain's national security. It says she fears the Revolutionary Guard is stepping up its activities and trying to recruit organised crime gangs to target opponents of the regime. It's an apparent threat from China that leads the Sunday Telegraph. It reports ministers' warnings that imported electric cars will allow Beijing to harvest information on UK drivers. Fat Cats cash in on costs of living squeeze is the headline in the Mail on Sunday. It reports that top bosses at banks, energy firms and supermarkets have raked in more than £100 million in pay and perks. The Observer highlights what it calls the appalling state of warehouse jails. The paper's investigation found the vast majority of prisons in England and Wales were providing inadequate conditions or unacceptable treatment. And the Sunday Mirror says the celebrity chef Jamie Oliver has joined calls for the government to give free school meals to struggling children all year round. Let's look at the papers this morning. Finally, a look at the headlines again. Ministers have ditched guidance that said prisoners who'd been released after having their convictions overturned could be charged for their food and accommodation while in jail. President Zelensky says Russia has bombed a blood transfusion centre, causing deaths and injuries. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been taken into custody after being given a 3-year jail sentence for corruption. BBC News.
Which is read by Tom Sanders. Now with a look at the weather forecast for the next 48 hours and beyond, Thomas Schaffenecker.
Thank you very much. It was a wet and blustery day across many parts of the UK and especially in the southwest, with gales in places and an isolated wind gust of 78 miles per hour around Torbay. Very unusual for August, but the good news is that the outlook is looking significantly better for all of us. Let's start with the weather for the rest of the night. Much of the country can expect clear skies or little cloud. However, in East Anglia and along the Lincolnshire and Yorkshire coast, it will be quite windy and with a chance of a few showers. Early temperatures will range from 6 degrees in rural locations, almost anywhere in central Britain, to around 12 degrees in larger towns and around coastlines. Now let's delve into the weather forecast for Sunday then. With the exception of East Anglia, where cloudier skies are expected with a few showers, a substantial portion of the country will wake up to sunny conditions and gentle breezes, really a delightful beginning to the day. As the morning progresses, though, into the afternoon, clouds will bubble up, giving rise to some showers across Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales. The likelihood of encountering showers will be quite widespread, but many of us will miss them too. And I think it may actually end up being a mostly sunny day, for example, in southwestern parts of England, the west and also around the Irish Sea. East Anglia will remain blustery, though. Temperatures are forecast to remain relatively cool on Sunday, ranging between 16 and 18 degrees Celsius, I think, for the majority of the UK, with around 20 or 21 in London and the southeast. Sunday evening is set to be fine and dry, and then Monday will once again bring a mixture of sunshine and hit or miss showers. So when will it turn warmer for all of us? Well, the answer is later in the week, widely into the 20s, perhaps high 20s for some of us.
Some good news, Thomas. Thank you. Thomas Schaffenecker at the BBC Weather Centre. Now, Radio 4, the poet Helen Mort explores early morning wakings and finds the Anglo-Saxons had a word for it in the Dawn Care.
Ucht-care.
Ucht-care.
Code. Ucht-care. Is that better?
Yeah.
It's nice to say. It kind of feels like a pebble in the mouth, I think. But what does it mean?
So ucht is the Old English word for the last part of the night, just before the dawn. And then care is grief